They came out of the dark like ghosts, their ships blotting out the stars, sleek, silent, bristling with power. The Galactic Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, burned civilizations to ash, and enslaved species that dared to resist. But when they reached Earth, they hesitated. Not because of fear. Arrogance ran deep in the Empire's blood. No, they paused because Earth looked primitive, barely united, still struggling with internal wars and environmental collapse. A perfect target. Easy pickings. The initial assault was swift. They hit the satellites first, blinding Earth's eyes. Then the power grids, the internet, global communications. Cities went dark. Panic spread like wildfire. Then came the dropships. Unholy machines that split the skies and vomited out armored warriors. The Empire expected chaos. They didn't expect coordinated resistance. Within hours, guerrilla units were hitting back. Not governments, not armies. People. Farmers with old rifles. Teenagers using drones. Retired engineers building EMP weapons from scrap. The invaders laughed at first, until their walkers started falling. Their scouts vanished, and their supply ships never returned. And then came the first real message from Earth, broadcasted across all frequencies in 27 languages. This is not war, this is home defense, and we haven't even gotten serious yet. High command of the Empire didn't take it seriously. Just propaganda, they thought. A desperate bluff. So they deployed Phase 2, orbital bombardment. They'd done it to other planets, glass the surface, rebuild later. Only it didn't work. Somehow, the nukes and plasma bombs were intercepted mid-air by Earth's own satellites, now hacked and weaponized by civilian tech experts. The atmosphere lit up with brilliant flashes as the sky turned into a battlefield. Something wasn't right. In orbit, Admiral Verix paced the deck of the dreadnought Ardent Flame. A Zenthari bred for command, his species had ruled empires long before this one. His 6 eyes blinked in tight sequence as he reviewed the latest intel. Earth should have fallen by now. Resources depleted, population panicked, resistance futile. But instead, Earth was fighting back harder than any race they'd ever encountered. A lieutenant approached, scales pale with nervous energy. Admiral, the forward fleet reports total loss. 80% of ground troops wiped. Remaining units surrounded. They're asking for extraction. From a single continent? Verix hissed. The officer hesitated. No, sir. From 6. He turned, his voice a low growl. How many humans are we dealing with? We estimated global organized militia forces to be under 20 million. Yes, sir. That's what we thought. What are the new numbers? The lieutenant's voice shook. Over 900 million confirmed combatants, possibly more. Sir, it seems civilians are fighting. Children, elders, untrained yet coordinated. They're adapting faster than we can respond. Silence filled the command deck. Verix clenched his claws behind his back. His translator struggled for a moment as his native tongue clicked and hissed in low syllables. And the footage? The officer nodded, bringing up the screen. It played raw feeds from body cams, human fighters ambushing drop squads with home-built explosives, city streets turned into traps, swarms of tiny quadcopters disabling tank systems, wild-eyed resistance fighters laughing as they blew holes through elite Empire troops with scavenged tech. But one clip stopped them cold. A human commander, face bloodied, stood before a captured Empire general. She leaned close, whispering, "You think this is our army?" "Number, this is just us being angry. You haven't even seen our military." And then she let the general live, sent him back up in a stolen dropship with a tracking beacon buried in his armor. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. The general's dropship limped back into orbit, smoke trailing from its undercarriage as emergency protocols guided it to the docking bay of the ardent flame. Medics rushed forward, but the general staggered out on his own, his face pale, movements stiff, and a haunted look in his 4 eyes. Admiral Verix watched in silence. "What did you see?" he finally asked. The general swallowed hard. "Everything we feared. And more." The admiral motioned toward the medical officers, dismissing them. He wanted no distractions. "You were captured. You returned. Explain." The general's voice cracked. "They could have killed me, easily. Instead, they showed me something. Deliberately. They wanted me to come back." "What did they show you?" The general raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the viewport that overlooked the blue and green world below. "Not an army, a mindset. They don't fight like we do. No ranks, no chain of command. They fight like it's personal. Like every human is a general, a soldier, and a weapon all at once." Verix's eyes narrowed. "That's chaos." "No, sir," the general whispered. "That's what they want us to think." He reached into his uniform and dropped a human-made tablet on the table. It flickered to life, playing a video in broken galactic standard. A woman stood before a makeshift war map drawn on a cafe chalkboard. Civilians, some barely out of school, some in wheelchairs, listened closely. Her words were simple. "They thought taking out our armies would break us. But they forgot one thing. We don't need orders to protect what's ours." Admiral Verix turned away, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "They're not an empire. They're a wildfire." Elsewhere, on the surface of Earth, in the ruins of what used to be Geneva, a squad of Empire enforcers crouched in a crumbling museum, waiting for extraction. Their commander, a young but promising officer named Uthran, held his plasma rifle tight. His squad had been ambushed 3 times in the last 2 hours, once by a 12-year-old on a bicycle who dropped a grenade in their path, and again by an old woman who'd lured them into a church, then collapsed the roof with explosives hidden under hymnals. He'd never seen anything like it. And now, in the dim light, he saw movement, shapes in the fog, human silhouettes moving fast, too fast. "They're here!" Uthran barked. "Defensive formation!" But it was already too late. The walls burst inward. Smoke grenades hissed. Blinding lights and thunderous shouts disoriented the troops. And then they were on them. Humans, wearing patched armor and wielding weapons clearly made in garages and basements. Yet they moved with precision, like they had done this their whole lives. Uthran fired blindly. One of his shots clipped a human in the shoulder. The man didn't even flinch. He dove at Uthran, tackled him to the ground, and jammed a combat knife made from recycled steel against his throat. The human leaned close, face smeared with ash and sweat. "Thought you broke us? We build under pressure?" Uthran stared up, breathing hard. "You're not military?" The man laughed. "Military? That's cute." He stood and let him go. "I fix cars for a living. Or did, before you bastards blew up my shop." Then the man turned to the others. "Move out. Leave the wounded. We're not executioners." Uthran watched them vanish into the smoke, dragging their wounded with them, leaving nothing but broken pride and silence. Later that night, Uthran would transmit a message to command, a single line. "If what we've seen isn't their army, then may the stars have mercy when it does arrive." The Empire had always believed in overwhelming force. Crush resistance early, and the rest would kneel. But Earth didn't kneel. It bared its teeth and bit back harder. And now, deep within the heart of the Pacific Ocean, something stirred. Not resistance fighters, not civilians, something else, something trained. It began with silence, an absence of signal picked up by an Empire surveillance satellite, a dead zone where there should have been radio chatter, radar pings, movement. Then the silence exploded. A burst of encrypted comms from underwater, followed by dozens of heat signatures breaching the surface. Submarines. Dozens. Sleek, dark, and deadly. They weren't civilian ships. They weren't government-issued either. They were ghosts. Back on the ardent flame, Admiral Verix stood before a projection of Earth's oceanic data. New contacts blinked into existence every minute. Ships surfacing where none had been detected. Transports, drones, aircraft, not part of any known Earth Navy. "What faction is this?" he growled. "Another country?" The analyst beside him shook his head. "No known nation claims them. They use no flags, no identifiers, but they're armed. Advanced technology, cybernetically enhanced suits. They're deploying deep-sea artillery platforms. And, sir, they've taken out 3 of our orbital communication relays in the last 5 minutes." "Impossible," Verix muttered. "We swept the oceans." "You missed the bottom, sir," the analyst said quietly. "Humans didn't hide their army in bunkers or bases. They buried it under the sea. Below, near the Mariana Trench, a massive platform rose from the depths, jet black, plated in a strange mix of steel and titanium alloys, covered in barnacles and scars. It was old, but alive. Its engines lit up, casting a dull blue glow in the abyss. Inside, men and women strapped into exosuits. Their armor wasn't flashy. It was brutal, practical. Their faces were marked, not with medals, but with loss. These were the ones who trained in silence, who waited for a day they hoped would never come. Commander Elira Vance stood at the heart of the operation. Once a naval officer, now the leader of Earth's unofficial last line, a military force built off the books, funded in secret, trained without limits. When the world governments failed, they prepared. And now, it was time. She looked at the feeds from the surface, cities burning, civilians fighting with kitchen knives and Molotovs. "They weren't supposed to carry the weight," she said softly. "They weren't supposed to be the first line. That was us." A younger officer nodded. "Then let's take it back, Commander." Elira smiled grimly. "Deploy everything. Full blackout. No warnings, no mercy." The first move came in the sky. High above Europe, 3 Empire carriers hovered like predatory beasts, deploying reinforcements. They didn't see the stealth drones until it was too late. Human-engineered, hyper-fast, silent as death, the drones pierced the ship's underbellies and detonated inside their engine cores. In 30 seconds, 3 carriers became fireballs. Then came the silent rain. Kinetic rods dropped from orbit by the rogue platform, fast enough to punch through ship armor like paper. Empire vessels began dropping from the sky like wounded birds. The humans weren't fighting anymore. They were hunting. In a jungle in South America, a platoon of Empire troops was ambushed, not by scattered rebels this time, but by coordinated strike teams. Exosuits blurred between the trees, executing clean, silent kills. One trooper managed to escape, only to trip a tripwire that activated a net made of carbon thread wire. He was pinned, struggling, as a figure stepped from the shadows. Black armor, unmarked, rifle aimed. The voice from the helmet was cold. "Your war just changed." And then, silence again. In the Imperial War Council aboard the flagship orbiting further out, panic set in. Reports were pouring in too fast to track. Empire commanders were being hunted, ships destroyed mid-flight, bases razed overnight. One captain screamed across a broken comm line, "They weren't hiding their army. They were training it where we weren't looking, underwater, underground, in space. They let their civilians bleed just to bait us into a false win." Then static. Admiral Verix stood motionless. So Earth had a real army. And it hadn't shown up until now. They thought they'd already faced the worst. They were wrong. This was the warm-up. Across the void of space, the Empire's communication networks were in chaos. Messages overlapped, corrupted, or never arrived at all. High command ships found themselves isolated, orbiting above a planet that had suddenly stopped playing by the rules. Earth had been unpredictable from the beginning. But this was something else. This was surgical, calculated destruction. Admiral Verix stood at the center of the war chamber, surrounded by his top strategists, the air thick with fear masked as formality. One of the senior tacticians, a grizzled Noxari with implants from 20 campaigns, slammed a datapad down on the table. "We've lost 53 ships in 20 hours. Our forward bases are dust. Our drones are being hijacked mid-air. This isn't guerrilla warfare anymore. This is an organized military force." Verix didn't respond. His eyes were locked on a holomap of Earth. Red markers were vanishing by the second. Each blip was a destroyed unit, a fallen ship, a shattered battalion. "What are these new units, these black-armored soldiers?" another commander asked. "We have no data on their command structure, no emblems, no insignia." "They don't want to be known," Verix muttered. "They want us to guess." Below, Earth's underground networks were lighting up. The last line's full force had mobilized. Strike teams hit Empire weapon convoys, intel bases, and drone hubs with terrifying precision. They left nothing behind. No survivors, no signals, only messages, carved into walls, etched into helmets, painted in blood. This was just our warning. In a battered farmhouse outside of Warsaw, 2 resistance leaders met with a figure from the last line. He wore the same black armor, but his helmet was off, revealing a human face, older, weathered but sharp. Commander Jace Nolan. He dropped a hollow drive on the table. "Intel says they've got a planetary weapon, something big, deep in orbit, a city buster. They call it the Judgment Ray." One of the resistance leaders, a woman with burn scars across her jaw, leaned forward. "What's the plan?" Jace smirked. "We take it." She blinked. "You're serious?" "We didn't come up from the bottom of the ocean to play defense. This war ends in orbit. We're going up." In low Earth orbit, the Judgment Ray spun slowly, its lens panels unfolding like petals of death. Its core glowed a sickly red. One shot could vaporize an entire region. It was the Empire's trump card. Inside, the Imperial crew prepared for activation. The countdown had begun. Then something unexpected happened. Alarms blared, external hull breach, systems failure, internal gravity loss. Explosions tore through the control room before anyone could even reach the override console. Human operatives, 8 of them, burst through a maintenance shaft, moving like shadows, planting charges, cutting wires, disabling everything with ruthless efficiency. A terrified Imperial tech officer backed into a corner, watching one of the black-armored figures approach. "How did you even get up here?" he cried. "We control orbit." The human paused, looked him straight in the eye through the visor, and said, "You did." They left nothing functional. The Judgment Ray exploded into flaming debris, scattering across the upper atmosphere like burning confetti. From his command deck, Admiral Verix watched the explosion through the viewport. It was visible even from his distance. He felt a coldness settle in his bones. That weapon was their fallback, their leverage. Gone. "Send the call," he said slowly. A lieutenant turned. "Sir?" Verix's voice dropped an octave. "Evacuate secondary fleets. Fortify the homeworld. Send word to the Empress." "You mean, surrender?" "No," Verix growled. "I mean, this isn't a conquest anymore. It's a war for survival." Down on Earth, the black-armored soldiers regrouped. In the silence of a bunker beneath Siberia, Commander Elira Vance debriefed her teams. Everyone was bruised, exhausted, but alive. She looked at her people. Most weren't military anymore. They were scientists, athletes, engineers, mechanics, ex-Marines, all volunteers, all driven by something deeper than duty. "You've done more in a week than any army has in a year," she said, "but we're not done." "Then what's next?" someone asked. Elira turned to the live satellite feed. Imperial ships, once dominating the skies, were now retreating, pulling back, realigning. She narrowed her eyes. "They're calling for reinforcements," she said, "which means they're afraid." A pause. "And fear?" That's the first crack. The stars had always seemed unreachable for most of humanity, distant, mysterious, untouchable. But now they looked different. The skies weren't just filled with stars anymore. They were littered with the remains of warships, burning debris streaking across the night like meteor showers. Children in war-torn cities watched them fall and whispered wishes on the trails of fire. But Earth wasn't making wishes anymore. Earth was making moves. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity took the offensive beyond its atmosphere. On the far side of the moon, hidden in the shadowed craters where no telescope from Earth could see, lay Outpost Perseus. It had started as a secret research station funded by a coalition of off-the-books science divisions from several nations. Long disbanded governments, now just memories in ash. But the outpost lived on, expanding slowly, feeding on rumors and fear. And now, it became the launch pad of Earth's first counterstrike into deep space. Inside the hangars, black-hulled strike ships hummed with power. Not graceful like the Empire's vessels. No, these were brutalist masterpieces, jagged with armor, retrofitted with stolen alien tech, and fueled by Earth's unstoppable instinct to survive. Commander Elira Vance stood before the fleet with a grim smile. "Today we don't wait," she said into the comms. "Today we bring the fire to their front porch." The response was one unified thrum, engines flaring, weapons locked, soldiers buckled in. And then they launched. Back aboard the Ardent Flame, Admiral Verix paced. The news had gone from bad to worse. Imperial reinforcements were still a week away, and Earth had gone quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence meant planning. He knew it. "We've underestimated them," he muttered, staring out at the burning edge of Earth. "We made them fight like us. They learned." He was still speaking when the first strike hit. Not on Earth. On one of the Empire's outposts, Zarkon 4, a mineral-rich planet 2 systems away, long thought untouchable. The humans didn't invade. They erased it, hit the power grid, crashed the orbital controls, nuked the command center. By the time Verix got the report, Zarkon 4 was gone. And then came the broadcast. It played on every Imperial ship within 10 light-years. A woman's voice, calm, controlled. "This is Earth. You came to us with fire. Now we bring the storm. For every child buried in rubble, for every city burned, for every scream you ignored, we will burn 10 of yours. This isn't defense anymore. This is debt collection." Within a week, 4 more fringe colonies were attacked. No survivors, no ships left behind, just wreckage and a signature. The mark of the last line, a jagged E carved into the ruins. Earth. Meanwhile, aboard one of the strike ships heading into deep space, Sergeant Theo Ramos stared at the empty void ahead. He was once a firefighter in Boston. His wife and daughter had died in the first wave. He hadn't spoken much since. Now he was a gunner. "You ready?" his commander asked. Theo didn't answer at first. Then he muttered, "They thought we were just scared animals." The commander nodded. They forgot that cornered animals bite hardest. Their ship broke warp speed, heading straight for an Empire fuel station the size of a small moon. No backup, no retreat, just revenge. Back in orbit, Empire morale was crumbling. Lower ranks questioned orders. Officers reported mass desertions. Whole battalions were disappearing, some defecting, others just vanishing. And deep inside the ardent flame, Admiral Verix stood alone before a massive screen. On it, a looping message from Earth played again and again. "You mean that wasn't their full army?" He replayed it. Again. And again. He finally understood. It was never about numbers. It was about will. And Earth's will was endless. The Empire's homeworld, Zorath Prime, was the crown jewel of their dominion. A sprawling city planet of towering spires, atmospheric shields, and glowing highways that stretched across continents. It had never been touched by war, never seen the horror of invasion. For millennia, it was untouchable, a monument to superiority. Until now. In the black vacuum just beyond its security perimeter, a tear in space shimmered. Then it widened, cracked like glass, and opened into a tunnel of chaos. Earth's strike fleet burst through, ships cobbled together with rage and ingenuity, engines screaming, weapons primed. The last line had arrived. And they weren't here to negotiate. On Zorath Prime, sirens wailed. For the first time in recorded history, the planetary defense grid activated. Civilians panicked. Holograms of reassurance flickered over the city, broadcasting that everything was under control. But behind the scenes, the Imperial High Council was in freefall. "The humans are here? Here!" one counselor shouted, slamming a clawed hand against the war table. "That's 2 systems beyond their capacity." Another muttered, "They must have stolen FTL tech. That's the only explanation." Admiral Verix appeared on the holoprojector, his face grim and older somehow, like the last few weeks had dragged centuries out of him. "They didn't steal anything," he said. "They earned it." Down on the planet's surface, chaos bloomed. Evac shuttles tried to launch. Anti-air defenses lit the sky, but nothing prepared them for what landed in the center of their capital, a black meteor, sleek and pulsing with light, crashing into the Emperor's square. It wasn't a weapon. It was a drop pod. The doors hissed open. Out stepped Earth's elite. Commander Elira Vance led the charge, flanked by soldiers with no names and no fear. They moved with perfect silence, through smoke and fire, toward the heart of an empire that had once laughed at the idea of Earth resistance. Now, they weren't laughing. Now, they were screaming. In a marble-walled chamber atop the spire of Dominion, the Empress of the Empire stood watching the footage unfold. She had never imagined this moment. No one had. Earth had been seen as primitive, petty, divided. But something had shifted. She turned to her advisors. "What are we looking at?" A trembling aide replied. "Tactical deployment of rogue specialists, coordinated orbital bombardments, cyber warfare disruption across our systems. They're treating this as retribution." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "How many?" "We estimate less than 300 entered the capital. But ma'am, they've already brought down 2 defense towers and hijacked our command grid." She went quiet. 300 humans were bringing an empire to its knees. In the wreckage of the Imperial Ministry, Elira moved through halls of shattered glass and fire-scorched banners. They weren't targeting civilians. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to humiliate, to leave a message so loud that every star system would hear it echo for generations. Elira planted a device on the central broadcast node. Her voice spread across the Empire's systems, hijacking every screen, every comm, every corner of their digital empire. "You took our world for a soft target. You killed our people thinking we'd die quiet. You were wrong. You thought our resistance was chaos. It was strategy. You thought our pain was weakness. It was fuel. This isn't a victory speech. This is a promise. You will never forget Earth." Then the signal cut, and the planetary AI went dark, Admiral Verix sat alone in the ruins of the orbital command center, breathing in the smoke of his empire's fall. He had underestimated them at every turn, and now he understood why they never sent their full army first. Because humans didn't need one. Every farmer, every mechanic, every grieving parent, that was their army. And the ones who came next? They were the Reapers. The smoke rising from the capital of Zorath Prime painted the skies in shades of shame. For the first time in generations, the Empire's throne world, once considered the heart of order and power, bled. Its streets, lined with marble and gold, were reduced to scorched concrete and shattered glass. Its towering monuments to conquest lay crumbled, their polished surfaces now cracked, smeared with ash and fury. From the roof of the former Ministry of Galactic Policy, Commander Elira Vance stood tall. Her armor bore the grime of war, the carbon scoring of near-death strikes, but her posture was unshaken. Behind her, dozens of Earth's finest lined the edge of the rooftop, looking down at a trembling city that had never known fear until now. Elira activated her comms. "Status." "Targets neutralized," came a voice from her left. Sergeant Theo Ramos, face partially hidden behind a visor. "Broadcast towers disabled. Local defense net offline. The people are unarmed. Orders?" She turned her gaze towards the horizon, where Empire citizens, hundreds of thousands of them, were gathered in the city's central plaza. Some clutched children, some wept. Others looked up, angry, confused, terrified. They had always believed they were the superior race, the chosen rulers of the stars. Their propaganda had never prepared them for this, for humans to stand over them. "No more bombs," Elira said. "No more blood. Let them feel what it's like to listen." She nodded to a tech behind her. The screen mounted on the central spire crackled to life again. This time there were no threats, no battle cries, just the image of Earth, a slowly rotating blue and green sphere, followed by the faces of the dead. Civilians, children, medics, grandmothers, soldiers. Their photos faded one by one as the camera panned to Elira. She stepped forward and spoke not like a conqueror, but as a survivor. "You don't know our names, but you killed us anyway. You didn't ask questions. You just landed and started taking, burning, laughing." She paused, letting her words settle in the ears of every Zorithian watching. "We were doctors, artists, students. We raised crops, fixed roads, laughed with our kids. We weren't your enemies, but now we are." Her voice dropped into a cold, sharp edge. "Because you made us one." The camera zoomed out slightly, showing the black-armored soldiers standing still, watching over a crowd that could rise up at any moment. But didn't. They were listening. "Your empire fell the moment you stopped seeing us as people, and now we return the favor. We are not here to rule. We're not here to enslave. We came to show you what happens when you push a species to its breaking point." Elira took off her helmet. Her face was tired. Her eyes carried the weight of 1,000 funerals. "We are Earth, and we don't forgive. But maybe, just maybe, we'll let you learn." The screen went dark. Below, the murmuring began. The Empire's citizens weren't sure what to feel. Anger? Shame? Guilt? The lies they'd been fed from birth, that Earth was savage, that humans were a failed experiment, crumbled in real time. They had seen the images, the ruins of human cities, the craters, the corpses. Some knelt, some cried, some turned their backs in silence, and some, for the first time, questioned. In the Imperial Council's underground bunker, one of the few places still untouched by war, the Empress sat in silence. Her most loyal guards were dead, her aides gone. She was alone, surrounded by relics of her ancestors, portraits of conquerors, statues of tyrants, all meaningless now. The door hissed open. Admiral Verix stepped in, blood on his uniform, no escort behind him. He didn't kneel. "They've won," he said simply. The Empress's lip curled. "They're savages." "They're survivors," Verix corrected. "And we were fools." He dropped something at her feet. A small glass case. Inside it was a single bullet. Primitive, outdated by any standard. But engraved on it were the names of 50 children, found in the ruins of a human school. "That's what they fought with," Verix said, turning to leave. "That's what beat us." She didn't answer. She couldn't. She knew it was over. Back outside, the human fleet began its slow retreat. They didn't stay. They didn't demand tribute or territory. They'd proven their point. Earth wasn't prey. Earth was patient wrath. As the dropships ascended, Elira stood at the edge of the roof one last time. Theo approached her. "You think they'll change?" She sighed. Not all of them. Some will try, most won't. But now they know." Theo looked up at the stars. "So, what now?" She smiled faintly. "Now we go home. And rebuild." And with that, Earth's army disappeared into the stars once more, not as conquerors, but as the warning written in fire across a tyrant's sky. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Not silent. Engines still hummed, and systems still beeped. But there was a stillness inside every ship that couldn't be touched by sound. The soldiers didn't celebrate. There were no victory chants, no toasts, just heavy breaths and the weight of what they had done. Commander Elira Vance sat alone in the command pod, staring at the data logs from Zorath Prime. Not battle stats, not casualties, just footage of civilians looking up in silence, of children hiding behind ruined statues, of a population that had, for the first time, been shown what their empire had truly become. There was satisfaction in their success, but no joy. Earth had won, but not without scarring itself in the process. She tapped the console, replaying the footage of her own speech, her voice echoing back at her. "We are Earth, and we don't forgive." She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "But maybe we should have." 2 weeks later, the first ship re-entered Earth's atmosphere, slicing through clouds over the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't met with a parade, no confetti, no brass band, just people, thousands of them waiting at makeshift landing zones, watching with sunburnt eyes and hearts caught between pride and grief. When Elira stepped off the transport in what used to be southern France, the crowd didn't cheer. They parted. Slowly, quietly, like they were afraid she might shatter. She didn't speak. She just nodded and walked straight through them. In the crowd, someone whispered, "That's the one who burned the Empire." Another whispered back, "That's the one who saved us." Across the planet, rebuilding had already begun. Not with governments, not yet. They were still too fractured. But communities had risen in their place. Farmers planted in scorched soil, teachers set up blackboards in tents, engineers fixed water lines with scraps. In South America, Sergeant Theo Ramos returned to the ruins of his home. His street was gone. The fire had left nothing but bone and ash. But he found the spot where his daughter's swing used to hang. He planted a sapling there. Just a tiny thing with half-dead leaves. But it stood. That was enough. He didn't cry. He hadn't since the invasion began. But he stood there for hours. In New Nairobi, a child played with a model of an Empire ship made from scrap metal. He threw it against a stone wall, laughed when it shattered, and shouted to no one in particular, "We're Earth. We don't lose." An older man, sitting nearby, said gently, "We don't hate either." The child paused. Didn't understand. Not yet. But maybe someday. Far above Earth, in what used to be an abandoned orbital station, the remnants of the last line met one last time. Elira stood at the center of a long metal hall, her armor finally off, revealing the deep circles under her eyes and the faded bruises beneath her jaw. 100 operatives surrounded her. Each one had fought across planets. Each had lost something. Each had seen what the Empire truly was. And now? Now they had to decide what came next. "This isn't a command," Elira said quietly. "It's an invitation. You've all given more than any soldier ever should. You don't owe Earth a damn thing." She looked at them. "But if you want to stay, help build something real, help teach the next ones how to fight without becoming like the Empire, we'll need you." No one moved at first. Then Theo stepped forward. "I'll stay," he said. "I've seen what we're capable of when we're cornered. I want to see what we can do when we're free." One by one, the others joined him. Not because they had to, because they chose to. And in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where the Empire's shattered fleets limped to hidden bases, a new truth began to whisper through the stars. Humans weren't weak. They weren't fractured. They weren't prey. They were a storm that rose from the ashes of arrogance. They were a warning to any empire that believed war could be won with arrogance and numbers alone. And etched into the hull of every last-line ship, in a language older than any empire, was a simple phrase. "You mean that wasn't their full army?" The galaxy would never forget that line. Because it wasn't just a question, it was a promise, a threat, and a truth. Earth had never needed a full army, just enough rage to stand, and the will to finish what was started.